I statistically analyzed over 65,000 Morgans so that I could better understand how they're graded so that I could replicate that grading with my AI. And I found some shocking things. One really shocking thing is if you take any year meant grade combination and you randomly select 2 certified coins in there from the same source, the chance that they will be at least 1 Sheldon grade apart, according to my AI ruler, is at least 1 in 8. For many buckets, it's 1 in 4. That means that there's a huge variation in grading in individual grades. However, when you look at the average grades, they're very consistent. So an MS65 from NGC and an MS65 from PCGS are very close to each other, and across Mint series, they're actually very, very consistent. So what this says to me is there can be a wide variety of grading of individual coins, but the average is actually very on target. Before I go deep into that, let me talk a little bit about the core issue. Imagine you have a town where anything that needs to get measured really only happens through one of 2 companies. Well, how would you ever tell the difference? One way to tell the difference would be to use a third ruler, to have one ruler that you know is stable, that you can judge both of the others off of and remeasure everything, and then see how those other 2 stack up. And in fact, that's exactly what we did. Now, I should point out, your third ruler doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to say this is 1 foot exactly. All that you actually need is that ruler to be stable. So basically, this is exactly the situation I stumbled into. All the time, I'm looking and researching CoinAiLyzer's grades versus the certificate grades because we're trying to get the grades better and better. And to do that, we have to understand how the grading companies grade. And that made me realize we have an excellent tool to be able to compare the grading companies against each other because we have a ruler that is pretty stable. As you're well aware, a grade isn't really a grade. A grade is a band of different grades. And so you might have a Morgan that's very high in the MS65 grade, right on the cusp of MS66, or one that's lower down. All of those are rightfully called MS65. So having an MS65 grade does not make the coins identical by any means, but it does mean that they're in the same relative quality category. The way that PCGS grades an MS65 is pretty close across the board. It doesn't matter what year or mint. So there's all these rumors out there about certain years and mints being graded a little differently, or well, this one has a weak strike and so therefore it's graded a little differently. In the statistics, I don't see that. That's not to say it doesn't happen sometimes, especially because I need a certain volume before I can make that determination. And so if it's a bucket that doesn't have much volume, that could be a problem. But generally speaking, I was very impressed that across the board, MS65 is an MS65 for PGS. However, even though the averages are very close, there is a reasonable amount of variability within each grade. 1 in 4 coins is at least 1 Sheldon grade off. Now, even if my ruler isn't correct, but it's stable, that's a pretty wide spread, which means that there's definitely opportunity to be able to find coins that are under or over graded. At the same time, however, very, very few coins are shown to be under or over graded by more than 2 grades. And so that's only about 33% are 2 grades or more apart. What this shows is that these grading services really do a very good job of tightly grading things. You can be pretty sure that they're close, at least according to my ruler. Now, there's a fair amount of difference here in the AU58 range in particular, AU55, AU58. What we see is PCGS is a little tighter on those, up to 0.75, so almost a full Sheldon grade higher than NGC coins rated the same. Now, I would not jump to the conclusion here that PCGS is a tougher grader on them. Not at all. It could very well be self-selection, because I have heard various dealers say, well, I'm going to crack this open because I think it's high in the MS58 and maybe I can get an MS60 out of it. I'm going to crack it and send it to PCGS. So I think there's a fair amount of self-selection going on there. I go into a lot more detail in the study itself about what might be going on here. There's a definite effect. Exactly what the cause is not clear. But one thing that was a little surprising is that as soon as you get into the mint states, there's very, very little difference. In fact, I can't put a knife blade between the difference of the two. So if you look at the average grade by date and mint, they tend to move in correlation with each other. So if PCGS is higher on average, often NGC will be higher as well. The exact reason underneath that, I'm not sure of, but that clear correlation says to me that they are following grading standards and that they're trying to be very rigorous about this. I would say the takeaway from this is that the companies are very, very similar, that they grade closely. I think this speaks to the old adage of buy the coin, not the holder. The certs have proven themselves to be very reliable, but there is still variability in there to be looked at. And it is certainly possible to find some coins that probably should be a higher grade than the cert has. And it's certainly also possible that coins might be graded a little higher than they should have been. But overall, the cert companies are doing a remarkably good job. So I'd like to make clear that while I think CoinAiLyzer can do a fantastic job of giving you a very accurate grade on your coins, nothing beats certification. And that's because there's a lot of things that they can do in person that CoinAiLyzer can't do. For instance, if it's some sort of forgery, there might be a difference with the weight or the diameter that we can't tell from a picture. We can tell a lot from a picture, but having the coin physically there with them, they can do even more. So you should consider CoinAiLyzer as a way to help you understand your coins, not as a substitute for certification. Even if we believe that we are a very good ruler to look at the certification. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this.